move on to our next activity on the program. We are going to have a panel discussion on the theme, Cybercrime Schemes in the Era of COVID-19 and the Way Forward. Cybercrime Schemes in the Era of COVID-19 and the Way Forward. Cybercriminals are developing and boosting their attacks at an alarming pace, exploiting the fear and uncertainty caused by the unstable social and economic situation created by COVID-19. So the NCSC has put together this team of experts to do justice to our topic for the day. This session will be moderated by Mr. Osei Bonsu-Dixon, Chief Legal Advisor and SGI National Coordinator, National Security Council Secretariat. Please let's clap for him. You're welcome, sir. So please, Mr. Osei Dixon would introduce the rest of the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Jemima, and then welcome everybody here to this special auditorium. Now, as you've been told, our panel discussion today will focus on the nexus between criminal activity in cyberspace and also the law. And so what I will be doing will be to run our panelists, our distinguished panelists that we have. In fact, there are some that will be joining us online, and then there are some that you would see in person, physically here. So we will be having a good time. She's already made introductions about who I am, so that is okay. And now what I want to do is to quickly introduce members of the panel that I have here. There is one member of the panel who is supposed to be here, but unfortunately cannot be here. But we will do business as appropriate. Now I have first on my immediate right, Mr. Eric Amwa Thompson. Mr. Thompson is an information security, data analytics, and privacy professional. He has over 8 years experience in implementing models, patterns, and trends to identify cyber fraud and provide support for cyber security awareness and vulnerability assessment. He has an enormous amount of industry experience, and that is also backed with enough certification. If I were to run you through the certification, I'm sure Jesus Christ would not even come until we finish. But I also have immediately after Mr. Thompson or Eric, Mrs. Audrey Mreku. Now, Mrs. Audrey Mreku is a cyber security specialist with 19 years working experience. She has worked for the Central Bank of Switzerland, has worked for the US Embassy, Airtel, Tigo, among others, and is now at the National Cyber Security Center, where she is a computer emergency response team lead. She's a member also of the international professional bodies in the nature of ISC Squared, ISACA, EC Council, and a number of them. We also will be joined, like I said, online by another professional. And here I'm referring to Mr. Anand Ramaswamy. Mr. Ramaswamy is an assistant U.S. attorney, currently serving at the U.S. Department of Justice, International Computer Hacking and Intellectual Property, Intellectual Property Advisor for Sub-Saharan Africa. He is an experienced prosecutor of cybercrimes across international jurisdictions, or in areas that require international cooperation as well as international collaboration. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have with us a number of individuals who can do justice to the topic. The fourth person, actually, we should have had him here, was actually ACP Dr. Gustav Janssen. Unfortunately, he's on a different assignment and cannot be here on this occasion. So, ladies and gentlemen, you have your panel here. I will go straight and ask our panelists a number of questions. But I would want to first, I will skip Eric and then go straight to Audrey. And want Audrey to acquaint us with the traditional cybercrime schemes that are currently in currency in Ghana here. And so, Audrey, if you can take that for us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dixon. Thank you very much, Mr. Dixon. Thank you. Cybercrime, cybersecurity points of contacts for incident reporting. We have noticed that the traditional crimes range from online bullying, website defacements, online fraud, impersonation, child abuse, online child abuse, amongst others.
And then from your point of view, Eric, I mean, is there any other variations that we're seeing among the traditional crimes that we have for cyber?
Okay, so these are all going on. I just have to emphasize the one that is rising, and that is the phishing aspect. In this era of coronavirus, people what they are doing is to lure people to click on a certain link or open an attachment that will require their credentials or place some malicious software on their computer or phone to collect some data. So this is really going on. Aside what we mentioned, we have phishing going on, and if you don't take care, you will be a victim. And once you're a victim, they will use your credentials to do a lot of things, and that's the impersonation that you're also talking about. So in the era of coronavirus, let's be careful of the phishing, the email you receive, the text message, not every link you need to click. Yeah, so in the course of the discussion, I will just let you know some of the websites you can go to actually access a particular web address, whether it is legit or not. So.
But the question of phishing, so for most people, they will be asking themselves, but what is phishing? So if you can elaborate on that aspect for us.
Okay, so for the benefit of all, I'm speaking to different categories of audience, so let me try to spell the phishing so that you don't think like it's a C phishing. We are just, it's PHISHING. So it's not FISH code, just to be clear. So this is a kind of attack where the criminals will send an email or a text message that let's take that. Let's look at the era of the coronavirus. They can send you a message and tell you that click the attach to know the guideline you need to follow in order to protect yourself from the virus. Okay, so you need to be careful of the address from which this message is coming from. The moment you click, sometimes they will ask for your credentials. If it is an email, you will see even Outlook. You can see the interface Outlook there. Okay, so if you don't take care, you will enter your username and your password. At the moment you do that, your credentials is sent to their server, and once they get hold of it, they can access your email. Yeah, so this is phishing. So phishing can take the form of email or text message or even a call in order for you to follow certain steps to be lured into a certain site for your information to be collected.
Okay, I thank you for that clarity. I'm wondering if Mr. Ramaswamy is actually online as we speak. And if he's online, I'd want him to join this conversation and update us about the very first issue that we are interested in, traditional cyber crime schemes. Mr. Ramaswamy, I think I can see him.
Crime schemes.
Welcome. Mr. Ramaswamy, I think I can see him.
Crime schemes.
Welcome. Mr. Ramaswamy, I think
Yes.
I can see him.
Crime schemes.
Welcome. Mr. Ramaswamy, I think I can see him.
I'm getting an echo. Do you hear that also? I'm getting an echo. Do you hear that also? Good morning. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. Good morning. I appreciate the opportunity. Good morning. I appreciate the opportunity. What we're seeing is, in general, three types of cybercrime related to COVID. So the first is, as was mentioned, phishing schemes or business email compromise schemes, where the subject line would be COVID related. The second would be websites or attempts to sell cures and mitigation for COVID. And the third we're just now seeing the third. Now that governments are making funds available to victims, is identity theft in order to get access to the funds from government.
Okay. 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 Can you hear me? Good. We're having a little. Can you hear me? Good. We're having a little bit of feedback with the transmissions. But there's one aspect, of the general discussions that I want to also capture, which is what is happening globally and or maybe regionally at this point. And I want maybe any of our panelists who is touched by the spirit, actually, to look at that. What are we seeing at an international level or at a regional level here in Africa?
What the intelligence we are picking from the region and internationally is not different from what Ghana is experiencing. Only the difference is that some of the scams are customized for Ghana. By doing so, internationally they'll be using credit cards and other means to defraud people. But in Ghana, they will definitely use our e-payment systems, which are only locally based. So the cyber criminals are picking up intelligence from internal partners. Well, I'm sure they call themselves internal partners. Then they customize it for Ghana and West Africa region.
Mr. Ramaswamy, I'm constrained to come back to you. So this is a picture that Audrey paints here. I wonder whether maybe from where you sit across the table or across the aisle, whether it is any different internationally.
The international aspect of COVID and cybercrime, was that the question? Okay. Internationally, what we're seeing, I think the effect is more on business email compromise and malware schemes that distribute spam emails. And we see it worldwide. We see it targeted to specific countries. For instance, in a campaign recently in Japan, where the emails, we know the country of origin, but they're written in Japanese and very good Japanese in order to gain the response. And it is simply that because it's the topic of the day, all of these email schemes rely on having a topic that is something you'd want to open that email and read. So this plays on the COVID fears, much like anything else, including more recently in the United States, it might be election related. It's whatever is most recently in the news, with the goal of getting you to open the email and the attachment so that if it's a malware based, it can execute on your computer.
I don't know whether Eric wants to make
Okay, just to add to my colleague panelist, fear or panic is a fruitful soil for the scams. So once the cyber criminals get to know that there is fear, there's panic, everybody wants to know what is going on. Everybody wants to know the hotspots of coronavirus. Everyone to know whether there is a vaccine for the virus. So the curiosity for the information and the fear will provide opportunity for the cyber criminals. So I did a little research, and one thing I realized was there was a situation, or there was this scam known as business email scam. Okay, what happened was that they were able to spoof the email address of a corporate body, and they send it to all their customers. They are telling their customers that due to the coronavirus pandemic, we are changing our bank account. And for that matter, if you want to pay us, kindly pay us to this bank account. Okay, so it was a wrong address. You know, IP spoofing, email spoofing is where there's impersonation here. They pretend as if they are the genuine company that you are working with. Okay, so at the end of the day, customers end up paying their money to that bank account, which was a wrong account. Okay, so this is basically what is happening. The fear is giving opportunity for cyber criminals to take advantage of.
Just to add on to that, what we are also seeing in Ghana is recruitment scams. How these happen is high-profile individuals are being impersonated on our social media platforms. And the cyber criminals are offering jobs to young people out there, and they're offering business opportunities. And we are also seeing online shopping scams, whereby companies are buying, or individual business people, women in Makola, where they contact their suppliers overseas, and they receive a whole consignment of masks without the straps, or they receive fake medication. Sometimes they even receive sanitizers that are not up to standard. And when they contact their counterparts back where they bought the goods from, they tell them that you have to ship them back for us to replace them. And our businesses, local business persons, then they have to foot the bill in terms of shipping the equipment back. And this is a huge loss in terms of cedis and dollars which are being spent in procuring this equipment. We're also seeing the cloning of business websites, including government websites, where cyber criminals, they copy exactly how the government website is like, then they register these websites internationally. And these websites are a replica of what is available locally. Color, board of directors. One thing that they managed to change is there's a slight change in the email addressing, because the domain is the same. So there's a slight change in the email address. So if you have seen maybe an email address that is associated with the Cybersecurity Center, they will add a 1 instead of the I there. And if you are not careful enough, you are going to do business, you are going to supply, and you're not going to get paid. And this is happening locally and internationally. Thank you.
So that is a very dire picture that we have of the country. I mean, in terms of the level of cyber criminality which is actually going on. But I wonder if you could give us a hunch as to some of the statistics so that, I mean, most of our listeners can relate to it. You are the shrine, you, the Cybersecurity Center. You have, I'm sure, figures about what is going on currently. If you can share some with us, that should be good.
The figures that I have are already, there are figures of people contacting the National Cybersecurity Center who are already compromised. So from beginning of January to August, the National Cybersecurity Center have received incidents, about 11,545 incidents. And 52% of these incidents make up of online fraud. Then we also seen 15% of the publication of non-consensual intimate images, which the cyber criminals tend to extort money from their victims. And we're also seeing online impersonation, which makes up 9%. All these lead to, the mission behind all this is online fraud. So if there's an impersonation, the end goal is to defraud somebody. We're also seeing disinformation and misinformation. I'm sure some of you have noticed earlier, before the lockdown and during the lockdown, that images were being circulated where certain countries, it was said that those who were going outside the country is released lions to make sure that people stay indoors. Such information is misleading, and it is illegal. So for such information, if you are producing that information, that is disinformation, and you sharing that information across our WhatsApp messages, that's misinformation, it is actually an illegal offense in Ghana. We're also seeing quite a number of children calling the National Cybersecurity Center and their parents seeking advice on how to keep their children safe online. Our children have been offered these devices that are online and they're alone at home doing online schooling, and some of them are just online at home alone with their guidance, who are not even technology savvy. So some of them are reaching out to us. They want to know, what course can I do in the meantime? We're seeing parents reaching out to the National Cybersecurity Center. I've given my child this device. How do I make sure that she stays safe online? She doesn't go to sites that I'm not comfortable with. We advise them, sit down with the child. There's no use spying on the child what he's doing. Sit down with the child, talk to the child on how they can stay safe online. Try and have curfew, the time they spend online. You should be, the devices that they use, make sure that they're authorized devices. Make sure that there's antivirus on the devices, because they are, unfortunately for them, they've not been introduced, unlike some of us, where in our work areas, there's awareness creation. For them, they've just been thrown into this dark world where they have to fend for themselves. Unlike in the traditional ways where we were told, don't go out late at night, don't meet up with strangers, don't eat food from outside. Our children are thrown out there, they're being groomed by people we don't know. You can't even tell, they can't even tell that the person on the other end is a 52-year-old or is a 17-year-old boy like him. So all this is what is happening in our space. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much. I want to actually quickly go to Mr. Ramaswamy. Now, there's another aspect of our discussion that I want to quickly loop in, which has to do with the international dimensions of it, particularly international law. So Ghana, for example, is signatory to a number of international instruments, both in Africa here and around the world. I think the biggest is Budapest. Now, what I want to find out from you is how relevant some of these existing conventions are in the wake of COVID itself, since COVID has also brought, like we've seen from all of you, a plethora of problems in the cyber domain. So, Mr. Ramaswamy, that's my question. I mean, how the relevance of these international instruments to the COVID situation or the cybercrime situation within the COVID era.
Yes, as you probably know, the United States was one of the original signatories to the Budapest Convention. And Ghana, more recently so, I believe took effect just last year for Ghana. Right. But I'll say this, that treaty enabled specifically Article 26. It has some very good provisions about sharing information between investigators in other countries, in different countries. That's a very helpful provision. But while it only enabled that sharing, what we have only recently seen, in my experience, is the actual sharing between countries in investigations. Because it is relatively new, I know the treaty's been in existence for some time, but the actual sharing between investigators is novel. I have a matter now involving several European countries in which we are accomplishing sharing through Article 26 of the Budapest Convention. That matter involves, it originated before coronavirus, but now, as Eric mentioned earlier, coronavirus and the fear of it is the basis of many of these emails. It now encompasses coronavirus. But that sharing allows our investigators in real time across nations to share information. But I think one of the hurdles has been, for most of us, it's simply not been done before. So we, like any new law, we're making our initial steps into it. And I will say, I have another case, for instance, a very recent case of business email compromise. And only last week discovered that the main suspect is a resident of Ghana. That's the type of Article 26 Budapest Convention sharing if we identified an investigator in your country. We could share information and jointly investigate. That's something I might discuss with you. Yeah, well, I'll have the investigator discuss with you later, but I think it's an avenue that's available, but most people simply haven't taken yet.
I see. So apart from Budapest, we also have the Malabu Convention that was actually, it came into adoption in the year 2014. And I'm particularly interested in knowing the African states and the responses. Now here we are in Africa, and Africa has also been deeply impacted by coronavirus. I want to find from your perspective, before we move to our panelists here, how Malabu has been contributory to helping us solve problems with cybercrime. So if you, Mr. Ramaswamy, if you can add your thoughts about Malabu, the Malabu Convention.
Malabu Convention, it develops a framework. It's sort of a skeleton, and the flesh will come on later by individual countries. So it's a starting point in an enabling legislation. What I don't know yet, and I'll tell you, I'm in the United States today. By the end of the year, I'll be based in Ethiopia and cover sub-Saharan Africa, and I hope to work and meet all of you in your individual countries. And so that we can see how the article, the treaty actually works. The part that caught my attention was the harmonization provision. Where the different nations, the goal is the harmonization of law. So I think that's a very important provision of making sure there's no conflicting provisions and recognizing that countries may have the opportunity to each prosecute or investigate the same actors, because so much of this is transnational in nature.
Right. Thank you so much. And so with that, before I come to issues about investigations and prosecutions that are occurring here in Ghana, I want to actually find out from you, Audrey. I mean, I think last year, like Mr. Ramaswamy was talking about, we actually ratified the Budapest Convention. I mean, since we have done it, I mean, what have been the follow-up actions? Anything you can share?
Yes, there's been quite a number of events through the Ministry of Communications. We've had workshops with our international partners where we have trained judges on how to action these cases when they are brought to them. We've had sensitization workshops in countrywide, and we've also had workshops with our MNOs, our mobile network operators, because for us to go online, they are the ones that provide the conduit for us to go online. If there's an investigation and they discover that the individual is in Ghana, it is IP address that to Ghana used. It is through the IP addresses that have been allocated by the telcos that they are able to identify that this particular individual is in Ghana. So we've had a number of workshops with our partners, the National Communication Authority, the telcos, where we've aligned on how we action requests coming from the our Budapest Convention partners.
And so on a scale of 0 to 10, I mean, where would you rate Ghanaian efforts, government of Ghana's efforts? Where would you put our own efforts as a government or as a country?
I would say it's 6. Why? Because the groundwork has been done, the policies have been drafted, and the sensitization is ongoing. Yeah, it's 6. It's 6.
Okay. And for you, Eric, when countries like Ghana or governments such as Ghana have, or the government of Ghana, yes, have ratified these conventions, what has been its impact on the private sector? How have private sector actors dovetailed into it?
Okay, so basically, some of these policies is to they are to guide the private sector to come up with a framework that will guide their cyberspace. Now, when the private sector are not embracing the cybersecurity principles, that is where there is a gap. Now, the policy is meant to ensure that the private sector is directed to go certain way to protect the customers. So when you look at the financial institution, for instance, where Bank of Ghana have to come out with the cybersecurity directive, it's not like the private sectors are not aware there's the need for cybersecurity measures to be implemented in the private sector. Just because there is not a directive, there was no directive or a law or policy to enforce or to make them implement such measures. They were not taking it as such. So such policies are good. They help direct the private sectors to take certain measures to protect their systems and also protect the customers' information they keep.
No, but it's interesting that you mentioned financial sectors, the Bank of Ghana. The Bank of Ghana, if my memory serves me right, has come out with cybersecurity policies that banks within the private sector as well as the public sector are to take. So, when you say that we are not pushing hard enough or fast enough, I really don't get you. Can you expatiate on what you're saying?
Okay, so I limited it to the financial institution. So basically, we need to have, we need to take it in a holistic manner, in a way that will cut across other private sectors. So it's not only about financial sector. The financial sector has been dipping. The measures has been dipping because of probably the money involved. When you look at financial sector, we have people saving their money there. So people are more careful about the money. Okay. In Ghana here, we are more conscious about the money than even data. So I think that is actually the trend now. So I believe that it should really be extended to the other private sectors, and they also have to buy into it to ensure that customer data are really protected. It's very, very important.
Okay, I'll cross over to Mr. Ramaswamy. Now, I want to know the nature of prosecutory efforts that are going on, for example, in the United States. And then I'll come to Ghana and see how our investigations and prosecutions of cybercrime is actually ongoing. So just give us a picture of how the U.S. is addressing prosecution matters on cybercrime.
In cybercrime in general, federally, we have a federal system, and then we have in our states, individual states have prosecution system. But federally, in the last 5 years, we've had cybercrime prosecutors. There are 94 federal districts in our country, and I was one of the cybercrime prosecutors. Now we're going to the international cybercrime prosecution as well. But cybercrime, I was at a presentation about 10 years ago when one of the presenters said, in the future, all crimes will be cyber crimes. And that is largely, I think, coming true, because every type of crime has a cyber component. Cell phones, even robberies where things are coordinated. So there's a whole spectrum of cybercrime. There are the larger conspiracies that are either credit card fraud or business email compromise. Those things generally take longer investigations, and they might take years. And it's sort of like a drug. I'll make the analogy to drug investigations. You can take a long term to take down a large organization, or you can prosecute the individuals who, in our case, we have what's called money mules, the people who are actually getting the money out from financial fraud when it is based on business email compromise. So you can round up the smaller players more quickly, generally, or you can take the time to do the larger, large-scale cybercrime cases. But these are very resource intensive, so that there really is an array in the terms of how we approach and prosecute cybercrime.
I see. So, ladies and gentlemen, well, I've been talking with a number of our panelists here. I mean, my last question was to Mr. Ramaswamy, and it was directed at him because he has spent a big deal of his life on cybercrime prosecution. Now, if it's been efficacious, if it's been very effective, why do we still have cybercrime on the ascendancy? Why hasn't prosecution been deterrent enough? So, Mr. Ramaswamy, I'd want you to address that aspect because I'm not too sure it sits well with many people. I mean, if it is effective, why is it rising?
A couple of reasons. One is you think about your use of the internet and computers and how that's grown, especially since COVID and the lockdowns, and how we are spending more time online, more work time online. Our lives are centered more in the cyber world. So we have naturally the growth of cyber-related offenses. The other part is cybercrime in many ways is nothing new. It is as far as fraud schemes. Some of these schemes, while much of the world thinks they originated in West Africa, they did not. The so-called Nigerian fraud scheme, the 419, that goes back over 100 years and was based on letters. It was called the Spanish prisoner scheme originally. So there's nothing new to it. What in terms of prosecution and your question, why is it still going on? It's what we would say is a cat and mouse game. We learn schemes are done and they're routinely done. So that once investigators discover the routine and find a way to thwart it, the bad actors find a way around that. So it's always a sort of leapfrog. Once there's a new step in the process that we and understand when we have a prosecution, our documents, our indictments, and bad actors see these and they learn from our investigative techniques. So it's an ongoing process. I don't think that will ever stop.
Well, I see. So it's an ongoing process. The criminal actors are themselves. So it's an ongoing process from the actions that are being done to counteract their own activities. But I will now come in situ and come squarely to the jurisdiction. And then I'll direct my arrows now at the lady who sits at the shrine of our national cybersecurity efforts. That is Audrey. Audrey, describe the kinds of investigations that are going on here in this country, and let's have a feel of it, so that we can now delve into the prosecutions of these crimes and how effective they have been.
Okay. I'll start off by saying that it is more cultural. As Ghanaians, we need to first learn to report these incidents because the perpetrators are with us in our homes. If we don't report what we are seeing or what we are suspecting, we are actually propagating these fraud schemes. 2, if these incidents are reported and we get to learn more about the modus operandi of these cyber criminals, we are able to put together material to do awareness training. Also, we have since realized that there's a skills gap in terms of technology and in terms of professionals in the industry and with our local law enforcement. So we need to scale up as a country, educate the nation, educate our law enforcement agencies and the private sector as well. In terms of investigations, we also need to collaborate, more collaboration between the industry players, government, public, and the children. Why? Because if there's evidence which can be easily concealed, then the investigation is dead. We need to do awareness creation for our parents, the children as well. There's one incident which was reported in January at the National Cybersecurity Center, which is now currently in our courts, where one individual was hosting material, sexually explicit material of our children. What happened between the time the little girl reported the incident and the actual time that the perpetrator was caught was a lot. We had to look at where the server is hosted, where the domain is, collaborate with the partners. Unfortunately for us, it was outside the country. So it's not like we could easily walk to one of the telcos and say, who owns this domain? And fortunately for us in Ghana, when you register a domain, there's so much information that they gather from you, whereby we can easily go to the register of domains and we get to know exactly who is behind that domain. But if it is out there, you can easily register a domain just by paying and giving them your name and email address, and that is it. So when you are investigating an offense such as that one, you have to collaborate with external partners where even the sensitivity of the case, it might not be a high priority for them, but it is high priority for us in Ghana. So there are quite a number of gaps which we need to close as a country.
I see. But before we get to issues about gaps, let me just first ask you. So somebody's reported, or somebody has found that his picture is circulating online and the wrong attribution is being made to him. He hasn't done something, but he's been accused of having done the thing, let's say a sexual act with another person, the image has been doctored, and it is circulating around. What are the remedies open to such a person? Who should that person report to? Who are the kinds of investigators that are called into issue? Can you give us a feeling of this?
Definitely the National Cybersecurity Center, through our incident reporting points of contacts, where you can call us via 292. We have a short code, 292. You can also send us a text message onto 292. You can report using reports at cybersecurity.gov.gh. We also have a mobile app for those who are technology savvy. You can download the mobile app, which is NCSC Ghana, from the Play Store or Google Store, where you can interact with us, have receive advisories and guidances, and also report events, because we encourage that you don't only come to the National Cybersecurity Center when there's an incident. Have a relationship where you report the event that it would lead to an incident so that it can easily be capped before it becomes an incident. Also, on that note, once you report to the National Cybersecurity Center, we are fortunate enough that we have developed a very strong ecosystem with the Bank of Ghana. If the crime borders around financial issues, we have strong relationships with the telcos through our National Communication Authority. We also have an in-house law enforcement agent from the CID department who works with us. So as soon as we receive these incidents, we triage them, and if there's criminality in the case is forwarded to law enforcement immediately.
Okay, so thank you so much. Now, it has been indicated to me that we have barely about 15 minutes. So I'll ask one question to Eric, and then I will open the floor so that we can receive questions from our distinguished audience here in this auditorium. So to Eric, I want to find out, we've been talking about prosecution, investigations, and things like that. A while ago, before we entered this auditorium, I was asking him, I put it to him that a number of people complain about the nature of cyber security education in Ghana in particular. And he shared some thoughts with me. I want him to actually highlight some of the problems or issues with cybersecurity education in contemporary times.
All right, thank you so much. This is one of the great questions I'll always be looking for. See, our educational system, to me, when you compare with the developed country, you can see that there is a gap in terms of the cybersecurity element in our curriculum. Yes, we do have ICT, we do have, computer courses in the various schools, that secondary schools, even primary schools, they are doing. But when you look at the primary schools, or you look at the the JHS or the SHS, these are the young ones that are most vulnerable to this cyber attack. Yes, you teach them how to use these IT systems and the computer, but there is an element of security inside the ICT, but it doesn't stand out. You know, cybersecurity is very dynamic. It is not static like the various courses that we study. So we should have a unique practical concept within our educational system that we will teach cybersecurity and also incorporate the new update or the trend of cyber criminals. So when we're able to do that, it helps the children to be abreast of the new techniques that the cyber criminals are using. Let me take, for instance, even this mobile money fraud that is ongoing. You realize that these criminals are not using one technique. Okay, if they are using this technique and there is announcement that, awareness that the fraudsters are doing this and this and this, then next they realize they change the technique. Yes, so we need to have a way of keeping abreast with the techniques which are being used by these cyber criminals to help create awareness and educate our children on how to protect themselves from this cyber criminals.
So we need to do that. But with that, I also need to go to Mr. Ramaswamy to collect his thoughts about what we can do to ensure that cybersecurity education is up there. If you can, in a jiffy, give us your own thoughts. Give us your own thoughts.
Cybersecurity in terms of business, what we do is direct outreach often to Business and educate on what the current trends are. This is what we're seeing now, for instance, and reach out to business groups and actually do presentations and let them know that if they have questions or if they have incidents that they can report. Because here's an important factor for us. When a business has a hacking incident or a corporation, they know that if that becomes public knowledge, it will affect their stock price and they will have negative consequences. So when we do business outreach, make it clear that they can come to us confidentially and tell us what happened, and we can tell them what we can do before we do it and allow them to make the decision about what happens next.
I see. Okay, so now, ladies and gentlemen, first, we've come full circle with the presentations that have been made here. But first, I want you to know that you can also contribute by asking questions. If you have any questions, you can motion with your hand. I will call you. Be snappy with your question. And if it's directed at a particular one of all our panelists, let me know. If it's at one of them, please let me know. The floor is now open. General questions from you. I take it that a lot of you seem to be, you have been either well-fed, overfed, or perhaps even underfed. I mean, that is the reason why you are so quiet this morning. But I can see, do I see a hand at the back? Is there any question for any of the panelists here? Okay, so in the front row. And please, you mention your name to us, and then you give us your question straightforward.
Hi, my name is Frank Tete from PwC Ghana. PwC Ghana.
Thank you.
My question is about, in terms of the financial sector, the banks have a directive. I just want to understand the policy direction towards how other institutions, aside the banks, so insurance, the securities and exchanges, or other government institutions, what is the directive? What are they supposed to, what guidelines, what are they supposed to follow in terms of information security?
Okay, so Frank's question is generally policy direction to the various stakeholders. I would say, you say banking, insurance, and the like. You understand? Health sector and all those, security sector and all those things. What is it to them? I know that at least maybe, well, before maybe our panelists take a bite at that, I know that there have been general directives coming also from, for example, Ministry of Communication through a cybersecurity center to look at the setting up of sets, industry sets, for example, within the various industries. And Bank of Ghana, for example, has been very much frontal about that. I'm not too sure about the insurance that you mentioned. That is something for us to investigate, find out, and be sure. But let me go straight to our panelists. Maybe they might have some thoughts. Audrey, you want to start?
There's a lot that's happening within the government space. One of which is the cybersecurity bill, which is before cabinet, which has a lot of direction on your question that you just asked. And also, apart from the cybersecurity bill, we also have the critical information infrastructure framework, which has been put together, which will be launched once it has been approved by cabinet and parliament, of course, which gives direction in terms of our critical information industry owners on how they are to protect our information that is information infrastructure owned by them.
Thank you very much. Any question? Any? Okay.
Hello. Okay, my name is Michael Tonyeviaji from Office of Head of Civil Service. My question has to do with our resource person we had in the morning. He made mention that our neighbors, Nigeria, the citizenry, you don't have to have more than 3 SIM cards. I want to know about Ghana. Are we also coming out with a policy in that directive that you also cannot have more than a number of SIM cards? Thank you.
I'm not too sure. This has been a different segment with a different type of panel that has been assembled here. I'm not sure whether maybe our panelists are disposed to that type of information. Any of you is clearly aware of what he's talking about, what Michael is talking about?
Not to my knowledge.
Not to your knowledge.
Yeah.
And what about Eric?
I think there is a limit, and this limit has been implemented in the various telcos. Yeah, so you might not see it public, but NCA, which regulates the various telcos, has communicated the framework within which you should place the limit. So definitely, when you see the limit, the telcos will not allow you to register a certain number of SIM cards.
Okay. Yes, I can see 2 hands at the back. I'm minded to pick, yes, the very first person, yes, in the front row, yes.
My name is Raphael.
Raphael, yes, let's go to Raphael.
So I want to ask, as we all know, cybercrime has come to stay with us. What are they doing to be able to help their basic school, or maybe from basic to secondary, our educational system, to give us some basic knowledge of how we can protect ourselves, as...
Okay, so Raphael's point is that cybercrime has become normative. It has come to stay in our midst. What are we doing to protect, for example, the children, the students, and all those things? Specifically, what are some of the things that we are concretely doing? What are we doing as a country?
Okay. I think already the National Cybersecurity Center had already taken the initiative to visit the various secondary schools. I've been involved in the outreach program since last 2 years. We visited some secondary schools. So basically, they are creating the awareness through that activities. I believe that with time, as I just mentioned earlier, we should look at our education system, the curriculum. We should see how best we can have as part of it the cybersecurity concept in a way that we can give them the basic, the things they need to know. Because seriously speaking, as I said, cybersecurity is dynamic. Things get changed. I mean, if you teach the child this way, and the cyber criminals changing their modus operandi, they will definitely, be caught in the net. So we need to be able to give update on the current landscape of the threat that we are facing. And when it's embedded in this particular or in our education system, it will be part of their daily life. And we should teach them how to fish. That's the key thing now. When you teach the child how to fish, he will always be able to detect threat by himself. So when I asked a question earlier on in the beginning, I asked, if we put a web address, if you see a web address, or maybe through your WhatsApp information, social media platform, how will you be able to know that this is a malicious address? This shouldn't be something really confined with the expert alone, or it's supposed to be only the professional that's supposed to know. All of us need to know. How will I detect that this link I'm clicking is malicious? So this is where I think we should do more in teaching the people how to fish, so they're able to detect threat and suspicious activities by themselves.
Okay, so threat detection, he's talked about outreach programs. He has also highlighted the issue of curriculum review. But he tells me that some of these things are actually ongoing. Let me go to Audrey. Maybe Audrey want to augment. You want to augment it?
My colleague has said it all.
He said it all, okay. So, well, there are two other persons that are, yes.
My name is Albert.
Albert, yes.
Okay, so my question is, the panelists have thrown more light on the various schemes, but I didn't hear anything about the digital currencies, because you know that right now the world is evolving, and some parts of Africa, even Kenya, are given policies to handle digital currencies and everything, like Bitcoin and Ethereum. And we know it's just a matter of time that get to gain grounds in Ghana as well. So I want to know what the cybersecurity division is also, what provisions they are making to accommodate that. And also if Mr. Ramaswamy could also throw more light on how they are handling such issues in US.
Handling what issues?
Digital currencies.
Okay.
Cybercrime or
related
cyber
to digital currencies.
digital currencies.
Okay, so our first move internally to Audrey, if we're doing something here that she's aware of, and then I will parachute myself to Ramaswamy.
The National Cybersecurity Center under the Ministry of Communication has a technical working group which is made up of quite a number of bodies from law enforcement, Bank of Ghana, whereby they sit and discuss on such matters. It has been discussed in quite a number of engagements, and certain policies are being put in place. It might not single out Bitcoin or online currencies per se, but they are being looked at in general, generalized as e-payment schemes or e-payment modes of e-payments. So there are policies already that are existing that govern e-payments in the country, and they're being updated as and when we pick up intelligence on what's happening internationally. It is being handled.
Okay, so I think that gives us some picture or photograph as to what is happening within the nation. Please, let me go to, how do you call it, Ramaswamy, and then see what the United States is doing in the area of like what you digital currency, e-coins and stuff like that, Bitcoin and all those things. Mr. Ramaswamy.
Yes, I'm here. We have I have a counterpart who does digital currency, dark web matters, John Ghost, here at the Department of Justice. And On the larger scale, more often seen, I would say, in ransomware cases. We see the use of cryptocurrency. Many people think that this is somehow anonymous, but it's not. Those things can be worked back, and eventually we can find the people who benefit from these. But I want to go back to the original question, I think, from Orbit about the use of mobile technology and mobile payments. That's something somewhat unique to the continent. The growth of mobile technology and mobile payments is exponential in Africa, and it's only going to get larger with the advent of 5G networks. And what I would expect to see is a sort of consolidation of or movement to larger payment providers. And that's going to be its own source eventually of criminal activity, just like we see in the credit card skimming and credit card fraud area, that if there's a source of money there, there's going to be people trying to figure out how to illegitimately get access to it.
I see. So thank you so much. I think there's a hand close by. I have just about like 2 more people, and then perhaps we will be wrapping up. So, yes.
My name is Abdullah.
Abdullah. I'm going to Abdullah now, please.
And this one is directed to Madam Audrey.
Okay.
Please, you mentioned an instance where a website was posting illicit pictures of a young lady, and it took some time to track the person down because the domain was bought outside of the country. I'd like to know, are there steps being taken to speed up the process so that such criminals are apprehended more easily and faster than it took you to get the particular?
So you are looking at, how do you call it, I mean, the processes within the Cyber Secretariat itself in terms of apprehension, detection of crime and things like that. Yes.
Yes, the government of Ghana has invested so much in fighting cybercrime and cyber security incidents. Currently, we are even expecting quite a number of our infrastructure to be brought in, workshops which will be conducted between ourselves and the law enforcement, and we are investing a lot on awareness creation. Because if there was no awareness creation, that little girl wouldn't have even reported to the National Cybersecurity Center. So if we sensitize the public, we educate our professionals, and we work collaboratively, locally and internationally. Government, I can assure you, the government has put in so much into that, towards that effort, and we'll be seeing results. We are actually even seeing results as it is right now.
Okay, so do I have any other? And that will be the very last one. I have 2 hands up. I'm tempted to avoid one, but I will take all 2. So I'll take you, and I take, but let me start with my friend at the back. Yes. Yes.
Okay. My name is Malik. From what Madam Audrey said, government is investing too much, so much into fighting cybercrime. I want to understand what government is doing in terms of the psychological understanding of those who also commit such crimes. In my experience, I've talked to some people. It's not that they don't know what they are doing is wrong, but they keep thinking it's a way of being smart. Once upon a time, somebody told me, no, they are not stealing the white. They are rather taking back what the white took from their great-grandfather. You understand? So I would like to understand, moving forward, what the government is going to do to also let people understand what they are doing is not just being smart, but it's a crime.
Okay, so I will take that in reservation. Audrey will answer it, but I will quickly go to the gentleman in front.
My name is Nee, and I'd like to know if someone would like to start a career in cybersecurity, what's the way forward there?
What is the way forward?
Yes.
Now, we've been talking problems and issues. Now we are attacking the issue frontally. opportunities. We should be also frontally looking at opportunities in the post-COVID era. And so I think that would be a general thing to all of us here. And I will first go to Audrey to answer the question that had been posed. So,
okay, so this is what happens. Soon as we receive an incident and it borders around it has an element of criminality in it. I made mention that we work hand in hand with the CID, Ghana Police Department, CID department in the Ghana Police. So there are already structures in place whereby the perpetrators are also cautioned and they are counseled. I know for sure because I know where there's an incident where a minor was engaged in child sexual abusive material, where he was actually pushing that material in other platforms, social media platforms. When the child was, one little girl reported that this is what's happening in our church platform, we made a phone call through the police CID department. The child was brought in, and it was talked to, and he was counseled, and he was alerted that when you distribute such material, it is illegal in the country. So I know for sure that even for cyber criminals and cyber offenders, there is a department already existing within the police where they actually sit down and they counsel perpetrators.
Okay, thank you so much. And so that would quickly let us now set ourselves ready to answer the very last question. The last question has to do with how do we up our skills in the area of cyber. I want to also add to it the issue of what opportunities are available to many, many countless millions of young people in this country. So first, I will start with Eric. I'll go to Audrey. I'll move to Anand. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much. Let me start by mentioning this professional body that we all know. I believe we've all have heard of ICA or ECCA. Good. They are professional bodies who train their members in accounting and finance and stuff. Okay, so basically, someone asks, how do you start a career in cybersecurity? Most of the times, when you come to the accounting field, people always have the mentality that ICA is only those who did accounting in school that can be a chartered accountant. But we see that the trend is changing. Someone will do science in in the university and still become chartered accountant. Okay, because he saw some relevance in it. Okay, so cybersecurity is not only limited to IT. People think that it's when you are IT inclined or technology savvy that you can go into cybersecurity career. No, it's open to everyone, irrespective of your background, because of the nature of it and because of how we are involved into it. Now, if you want to start, there are a lot of professional organizations or body like the ICA and those we have. We also have the cybersecurity professional body. Okay, so the one I'm representing now is called ISC Square. ISC Square is International Information Security System Consortium. So it's basically a professional body that train and issue certificate for members who pass the exams like the way ICA and those things. So those organizations will able to, or professional body will be able to give you some of the practical concept of cybersecurity and the new trend that you need to know. Okay, so there are other ones. I mean, when you are free, you can Google or you can search to get more information about it.
Okay.
Right, thank you.
So he will be available even after this session if you want to actually have. He's a professional, so you can actually get more from him. You want to augment it, Audrey?
Yes, please. Building a career in cybersecurity, like how my colleague Eric has mentioned, is for everyone. As we have noticed during COVID-19, people who were working a lot with our data, they needed to protect that data so that we don't get to see your name out there that you tested positive or not. We need lawyers, we need doctors, we need teachers, it's a field open to everyone. And when you are in IT, there's a corresponding role for you in cybersecurity. as long as you are working with data, as long as you are working with computers, as long as you are working with electronics, basically.
Okay. Anand. Can I go to Anand? Okay. So I would fill in for Anand. I would fill in for Anand. We're getting some.
I'm getting a bit of echo, but I'll continue if you'd like.
Yes, please.
There's a broad range and there's various paths into it. One is through the commercial sector, working with say the IT industry, and then if you wish to go into law enforcement, I know some of the better agents we have were IT professionals and then became law enforcement officers. Another is the path of law enforcement first, and then receiving specialized training in the individual fields. And every field you've mentioned and that Eric and Audrey have mentioned, every one can be the basis of its own subspecialty. Crimes against children, data protection, hacking, malware. There's just an increasing range here. So if you'd learn to do one of those things well, I think you, especially in a smaller geographic area, that would be the basis of more professional business, or more reliance on you as an investigator if you're a law enforcement.
I see. Okay, and let me just augment it from my own experience. Now, I'm a lawyer. I'm also into security, national security. So I wear two hats. I focus on cyber security. And now this is something I can tell you. And I share with all the panelists, our panelists this morning have said. So I see a number of areas for those who are interested in this field. Now, one is an IT-specific field, where you have technicians and engineers who specialize on cybersecurity technical bits. Then you also have lawyers, for example, because the cybersecurity issues evoke crime. Crime has its basis in law. Law has many divisions. One of those divisions is criminal law. You also have civil law. You have international law. So you have international cyber law, international criminal law, international cyber criminal law. You have international cyber contracts. Those are in the area of civil. You have municipal law, which, you know. So lawyers have a big scope when it comes to that. In framing policies, framing domestic instruments, domestic law, you need lawyers. But first, apart from that, you would also need them to have some understanding about the area we are in question, that is cyber technologies. So I worked with national security. Prior to that, I had worked as legal director for telecom companies. I have worked with a healthcare giant, one of the largest in South Dakota, called Sanford Health, basically doing med IT law, med IT issues, you know. So a lot of scope avails to people who want to. I've talked about IT, I've talked about law. There's also the issue of policy. So there are issues to do with cyber policy itself. For example, human rights issues with the area of cyber, gender matters in the area of cyber. I specialize on war, law of war, so war issues, using cyber warfare and things like that. So there you need policy issues. So there's a scope for people who want to be policymakers, administrators. You want to work at the ministries, but focus on cyber. You see somebody like Audrey, a lot of her things also verge on helping to develop national policy issues. Another area that I see is also solution provision. So that's the area of business, contracting, looking for solutions and setting up teams or setting up companies or enterprises that provides affected companies with training, consultancy, and things like that. Then the last bit is training and advocacy. First, training. So once you get into this field, you don't necessarily need to be, like for example, I don't specialize on the technical aspect. I specialize on the legal dynamics that are, so somebody has committed an offense against another. What law applies? Ghana has suffered a cyber attack but it's coming from another jurisdiction. What laws will apply? Conflict of laws internationally will apply. So those kinds of issues are the domain of lawyers. Judges, for example, need to understand this area because we talk about cybercrime. The only person who, by our constitution, can pronounce somebody a criminal is a judge. And it must be in a court of competent jurisdiction. So judges have to move into this area. And now advocates. You might not be any of the above, but you might be a cyber advocate. Ghana has signed on to a number of international conventions. I mean, your NGO can now start spearheading a number of things in that area. There are NGOs, for example, that I know, like others like Center for Strategic and Defense Studies. They focus on cyber policy issues so that they want to be sure that the continent, the region, the country is actually focusing on its obligations to keep children safe, to keep people safe, to keep the enterprises safe, to keep businesses safe, to keep government machinery safe. There are international rules from the United Nations, from the International Telecom Union, from various other bodies in ECOWAS that hinge on this. So there's a lot of opportunity. If you are interested in further opportunity about this, please talk to us also after this session, and we can be able to be of help. But we have the experts actually sitting here with us. Now, I want to actually round up our session by getting from all our panelists their very last words. So I will start actually with our beautiful lady who is nestled between Eric and then Mr. Ramaswamy, and that is Audrey. So Audrey, your last words.
I would urge each one of us to get to know more about information security, cybersecurity. Visit the cybersecurity website. There are quite a number of advisories there, that will show you current trends in cybersecurity, in cybercrimes. Visit them, acquaint yourselves, how to protect yourselves, and on how to stay safe online and how to do your online shopping, how to keep your documents safe, your government-issued documents safe, and from identity theft, how to keep your businesses safe. You have your employees working from home, how they're supposed to connect to your business networks safely. Visit the cybersecurity.gov.gh website, and we have a number of advisories for children, for public, for government, and for the general business at large.
Thank you, Eric.
All right, before I just give a brief message, let me just give this one out to all the audience. We have a site known as Web of Trust, WOT. I would like all of us to just search about it, and anytime you have a link or web address that it looks suspicious, you don't know whether it's legit or malicious, you can just use that link to detect, okay, to safeguard us all. Also, just to go more for the youth also, most of the time we live on the social media, so the Facebook, the WhatsApp, and the stuff. And most of the time we download a lot of apps from Play Store, Google Store, just to have a few of some of the games and other things that we do on the phone. Please, most of the times these apps ask for permissions. Okay, so permission to your location, you grant. Permission to your camera, you grant. Permission to your microphone, you grant. You see that they're asking permission so that they will be the app will be assessing it. Okay, if you are not sure of the app, please, it's not all permission that you need to grant. It's very, very deadly. Okay, if the app is not going to use camera, video, and you download and asking for access to the camera, what for? So if you don't trust the app, don't install it. And even if you are giving permission to some of the genuine apps, like maybe WhatsApp, other things, you realize that for the first time, when you're on WhatsApp and you want to attach video or camera or whatever, send it, it asks for permission, okay? But once you grant the permission, it doesn't ask anymore, okay? So best advice I'm giving to us all is that, yes, we might have legit app. It is better you grant permission at the time you want to use it. So if I want to send a picture to someone, I grant permission to my camera, then I will deactivate the permission. If I want to send, at the time I want to send again, I will grant. But if you make it open, okay, and you are hacked or any means through that, you can have an issue of security or privacy problem. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. And I want to now go to Anand. Anand, please, your last words.
I just want to thank you for the opportunity to address you all today on behalf of the Department of Justice. And this has been very informative for me to see how similar our systems are in terms of suspicious activity reports from banks, your financial information intelligence center is essentially the same as our financial crimes enforcement network. Our mechanisms are largely the same. The things by which we're victimized have much in common. And everything that's been brought up today is potentially the topic for another presentation like you've done. Child exploitation. I prosecuted those crimes for 7 years. And Audrey mentioned that quite a bit. Those can be, for us, the basis of emergency action. I know she mentioned there's some delay in it, but that's always a priority in getting information from service providers. What Eric mentioned about permissions from apps and so forth, every one of these things, there's so much information that could be done on all of those topics. Someone in the department would be glad to participate in any further presentations you do on these, because we have a lot of good information to put out. And your outreach to business and to individual users about awareness and largely being, I don't want to say suspicious, but rightly suspicious about being exploited. But again, I want to thank you. This has been informative for me, and I hope my input's been useful to your audience. Thank you.
Thank you, absolutely. And so, first, I want to thank, on behalf of all of us, the Ministry of Communications who have made this possible, who have launched this beautiful week, this beautiful month that is giving Ghana and the world an opportunity to discuss and to ruminate over issues of cyber security, cybercrime, and cyber law. I want to thank also the Ministry of National Security for collaborating effectively to bring this program live also clear and very clearly to you. I want to thank also the principal actors who have been in this engagement, particularly the panelists, right from Anand, from the Diplomatic Service, to Audrey from the National Cybersecurity Secretariat, to Eric, who comes from the private sector and is a consultant in his own right in this particular area. I want to thank all those people, particularly also Dr. Albert Entry Bwesiakon, Mr. Owusu of the Cyber Center, for all the work that they have inputted, particularly also all those who have officiated for this program and its nuances. We also want to thank the SGI Secretariat. They prepared some of the questions and research background issues that I needed actually to fill it. I also want to thank the Center for Strategic and Defense Studies, whose members, were also very elemental in galvanizing questions and areas for discussion. Last but not least, I have to thank you, our distinguished audience. Without you, our ceremony, our activity, our discussion, and the things that we have thought about would not have come to proper fruition. So if you have heard any good thing, if you have heard any sweet thing, if you have had any opportunity, if you have had anything that is worth thinking about, of such things like the Bible says, please think about. And may God bless our country and bless all of you. Thank you. We're done. Thank you.
Thank you very much.